My name is Mara Ellison, and 5 days after giving birth, I came home to discover that my husband had sold our house, emptied our accounts, forged my signature, and disappeared. I stood on the front porch with my newborn daughter sleeping against my chest while strangers carried furniture through my front door. At first, I thought exhaustion was playing tricks on me. I had barely slept since the emergency cesarean. Every step pulled at the stitches beneath my dress. My head still felt heavy from the medication, and baby Sophie had cried for most of the drive from St. Anne's Hospital. All I wanted was a shower, my bed, and one quiet hour inside the pale yellow nursery I had prepared for her. Instead, a moving truck blocked the driveway. A man carried a dining chair past me. Two teenagers dragged cardboard boxes into the hallway. A woman I had never seen stood in my living room giving instructions. "Excuse me," I said. "What are you doing in my house?" The woman turned. Her expression changed when she saw the hospital bracelet around my wrist and the tiny bundle in my arms. "Oh no," she whispered. Those two words frightened me more than shouting would have. She walked outside slowly. "Are you Mara?" "Yes." Her eyes filled with sympathy. "We purchased this house from Daniel Ellison. We closed 3 days ago. Daniel was my husband." I almost laughed because the alternative was collapsing. "That's impossible. Daniel lives here with me." The woman glanced toward her husband, who had followed her outside carrying a blue document folder. "I'm sorry," he said. "Everything was legally finalized. This is a mistake." I reached for my key. It entered the lock but wouldn't turn. A new deadbolt had been installed. The man opened the folder and handed me the closing statement. There was our address in Franklin, Tennessee. There was Daniel's signature, and beneath it was mine, except I had never signed that document. The letters resembled my handwriting, but the M curved incorrectly, and the final stroke of Ellison leaned backward. Someone had studied my signature carefully, someone who had watched me sign thousands of things during 12 years of marriage. My hands began trembling. Sophie stirred and released a quiet whimper. I called Daniel. The call went directly to voicemail. I tried again. This time, a recorded message said the number was no longer in service. I opened our banking application. My password had been changed. Our joint credit card was declined. The savings account that had held nearly 14 years of earnings showed a balance of $12.18. The retirement account was empty. While I stood there, barely able to remain upright, I understood something that would haunt me for months. Daniel had not betrayed me while I was in the hospital. He had only completed the final step. This had begun long before Sophie was born. During my pregnancy, Daniel had seemed perfect. He attended every appointment, cooked when morning sickness left me exhausted, massaged my swollen feet, and painted Sophie's nursery lavender after I changed my mind 3 times. Our friends called him the pregnancy husband every woman deserved. I had believed them. Now I wondered how often he had kissed my forehead, waited for me to fall asleep, and then continued planning my disappearance from his life. The buyers allowed me to collect anything they had found. Almost everything was gone. My clothing, photographs, jewelry, laptop, Sophie's stroller, and the walnut rocking chair my father had built before he died. The woman returned from the garage holding an old diaper bag. Inside were 6 diapers, wipes, 2 bottles, and a stuffed rabbit. That was all Daniel had left for his daughter. I thanked the buyers because they were victims too. Then I strapped Sophie into her car seat, lowered myself carefully behind the steering wheel, and called my mother. She answered immediately. "Mara?" Hearing her voice broke the last piece of strength inside me. "Mom, I don't have a home anymore." There was a brief silence. "Where is Daniel?" "I don't know. Come to me. I barely have enough fuel. We'll manage." "I don't want to become your burden." Her voice hardened. "You are my daughter, not a burden. Come home." My mother lived outside Huntsville, Alabama, almost 2 hours away. I knew I couldn't safely drive that far after surgery. But I also couldn't afford a hotel. I drove to a jeweler in downtown Franklin and removed my wedding ring. The owner examined it beneath a small lamp. "I can offer $1,300. I'll take it." "You don't want time to consider it?" "If I think about what it meant, I won't be able to sell it." His face softened. He counted the money and quietly added $50. "For the baby," he said. The next morning, I left my car at the Nashville bus terminal and purchased a ticket to Huntsville. After buying formula and pain medication, I had $28 remaining. Near the ticket counter, an elderly man searched the pockets of a faded brown coat. "I know I had my wallet," he told the clerk. "Perhaps it fell out in the taxi." "I'm sorry, sir," she replied. "I can't issue a ticket without payment." People waiting behind him groaned. The man stepped aside, embarrassed. His ticket cost $24. I looked at Sophie, then at the money in my hand. $28 was nothing, yet it was everything I possessed. I remembered my father, who had died 9 years earlier. He had once told me that character was what remained when doing the right thing cost more than you wanted to pay. "I'll buy his ticket," I said. The man turned. "Absolutely not. You have a newborn." "Yes. And I hope that if she ever becomes stranded somewhere, a stranger will help her." "I can't accept. You didn't ask. That makes accepting easier." A faint smile touched his face. After the clerk printed his ticket, he held out his hand. "My name is Arthur Hale, Mara Ellison." He looked at Sophie. "And who is this young traveler?" "Sophie. She's beautiful. Thank you." "I won't forget this, Mara." I smiled politely. People often made promises in emotional moments. Most never saw each other again. When my bus was called, Arthur lifted one hand in farewell. I waved back and boarded, believing I had spent my last $24 on a stranger I would never meet again. I was wrong. My mother, Evelyn, waited outside the Huntsville station in her 15-year-old Honda. The moment she saw me walking slowly with Sophie against my shoulder, she rushed forward. She didn't ask why I had trusted Daniel or how I had failed to notice. She simply held me. "You're safe now," she whispered. Her small brick house had barely changed since my childhood. My father's boots still rested beside the back door. His blue chair remained near the window, although Mom had covered it with freshly washed baby blankets. The first week became a cycle of feeding Sophie, changing her, taking medication, and trying not to cry loudly enough for Mom to hear. One afternoon, I found her at the kitchen table with a calculator and utility bills. She quickly covered her notes. "How long can your pension support 3 people?" I asked. "We'll be fine," she sighed. 4 months, perhaps 5, if we're careful. She had worked as a school librarian for 37 years. She deserved a peaceful retirement, not another daughter to support. "I'll return to work. You can barely stand upright. I'll find something remote. Your job is to heal and care for Sophie. I have to fix this." Mom reached across the table. "Then let someone help you while you do." A friend from her church introduced me to an attorney named Beatrice Monroe. Beatrice was 63, sharp-eyed and terrifyingly calm. She listened without interruption while I explained the forged sale, the vanished accounts, and Daniel's disappearance. When I finished, she removed her glasses. "The good news is that your husband appears to have committed several serious crimes. That's the good news. The bad news is that proving them will take time. The buyers had purchased the property in good faith. Removing them would punish another innocent family. Recovering the money would depend on demonstrating fraud, tracing transfers, and proving Daniel had acted without my authorization." "Did Daniel give you documents to sign during your pregnancy?" Beatrice asked. "Constantly. Hospital forms, insurance updates, maternity leave papers. Did you read everything?" Shame heated my face. "Not always. That doesn't make this your fault. It tells us how he obtained signature samples. Over the following days, we gathered statements, tax records, emails, and loan documents. The deeper Beatrice looked, the more carefully planned Daniel's betrayal appeared. The money had vanished gradually. $6,000 here, $9,000 there. Whenever I had noticed, Daniel claimed he was moving it into accounts with better returns. 3 months before Sophie's birth, he had persuaded me to stop monitoring our finances. "Stress is dangerous for the baby," he had said. That same week, he secretly listed our home. He had not acted in panic. He had prepared my ruin while assembling Sophie's crib and telling me how much he loved us. 2 weeks after the bus journey, someone knocked on Mom's door. Arthur Hale stood on the porch. He wore the same brown coat and carried a small envelope. "How did you find me? Your name and destination were on the passenger list. I hope that doesn't frighten you." "It surprises me." He handed me the envelope. Inside were $24 and a handwritten thank you note. "You traveled here to repay bus fare. I came because my wife would have insisted. Would you like coffee?" I would. Over coffee, Arthur told us about his late wife, Eleanor. They had been married for 54 years. He showed me a photograph of her standing beside a lake, silver hair blowing across her face. We talked about ordinary things: children, gardens, terrible hospital food, and how grief changed a house after someone died. Then 2 black vehicles entered Mom's driveway. 3 people in business clothes rushed toward the porch. "There you are, Mr. Hale," one man said. "Your daughter has had half of Tennessee searching for you." Arthur sighed. I told her I was perfectly capable of traveling alone. The board meeting has been postponed twice. I stared at him. Board meeting? Arthur placed his coffee down. I may have omitted a detail about myself. He was the retired founder of Hale Meridian Group, one of the largest manufacturing and logistics companies in the Southeast. His name appeared on hospitals, university buildings, and charitable foundations. The stranded old man had enough money to buy the bus company. You could have called someone, I said. My wallet and telephone were stolen. I wanted to see whether I could manage one simple journey without an assistant. You let me spend almost everything I had. I tried to stop you. Mom folded her arms. She inherited her stubbornness. Arthur smiled, then became serious. I didn't return because of $24. I returned because a woman with almost nothing helped me without asking who I was. I don't want charity. Good. Charity isn't what I'm offering. He placed a business card on the table. The name read Nathan Cole, Forensic Financial Investigator. Let him review your case, Arthur said. You decide what happens afterward. 2 days later, I met Nathan in a glass conference room overlooking downtown Nashville. He wore an inexpensive gray jacket and drank coffee from a mug that read, World's Most Tolerable Grandfather. For 4 hours, he studied every document Beatrice had collected. Finally, he arranged 9 statements in a line. This started 8 months ago. I was still pregnant. The first Shell account was opened 2 days after you announced the pregnancy. The memory returned instantly. Daniel and I had celebrated with takeaway food. He raised a glass of sparkling cider and promised Sophie would never lack anything. The next morning, he began stealing from us. Nathan uncovered hidden investment accounts, loans against marital assets, and transfers routed through companies that existed only on paper. Daniel had been covering losses for wealthy clients after years of reckless investments. When the missing funds grew too large, he used our savings. Then he sold the house to hide its equity from creditors. And the woman he left with, I asked. Nathan leaned back. Her name is Celeste Warren, but based on these numbers, an affair may be the least damaging thing Daniel did. Arthur called every Sunday, never to discuss evidence, but to ask about Sophie. During video calls, he made absurd expressions until she laughed. He became the steady presence I hadn't known we needed. By October, Beatrice believed we had enough evidence to freeze Daniel's remaining assets. I entered court certain the judge would see what appeared obvious. 40 minutes later, our application was denied. The judge called the evidence concerning but incomplete. Outside, Daniel spoke to reporters. I have always trusted the truth, he declared. He smiled directly at me. That night, I sat on Mom's porch beneath a cold autumn sky. Arthur joined me with 2 cups of hot chocolate. I can't continue, I said. Every time we uncover one lie, there are 3 more. You're exhausted. I trusted him. Perhaps that makes me responsible. No. Loving someone and assisting their crimes are not the same thing. What if he wins? Arthur stared into the darkness. If you stop only because you're tired, Daniel will spend the rest of his life believing decent people always surrender first. 3 days later, Beatrice called, Come to my office, now. A beautifully dressed woman sat in the conference room, clutching a designer handbag. Her eyes were red. I recognized Celeste immediately. She stood. I'm not here because I'm a good person. At least you're honest now. Daniel told me you were divorced. He showed me documents. She placed 2 flash drives and a thick envelope on the table. He also convinced me to invest $470,000 with him. Nathan opened the envelope. It contained contracts, recordings, emails, and transfer confirmations. Daniel had lied to Celeste exactly as he had lied to me. After scanning several pages, Nathan looked up. This is what we were missing. 4 months after Sophie's birth, we returned to court. The courtroom was packed because federal investigators had begun examining Daniel's businesses. Once his former clients heard about my case, several reported suspicious losses. Daniel entered wearing a navy suit and the confident smile I once found reassuring. Celeste had arrived with her attorney and refused to look at him. Nathan testified first. Without drama, he presented a timeline explaining every account, forged document, and disguised transfer. A title company manager admitted Daniel had handled all communications concerning the sale. He told us Mrs. Ellison had pregnancy complications and could not be disturbed, she said. Did you ever speak directly with my client? Beatrice asked. No. Were the signatures independently verified? We relied on notarized copies. Copies now believed to be forged? Yes. Next, a financial crimes detective confirmed that multiple clients had accused Daniel of misrepresenting investments and diverting money. Then Celeste entered the witness box. Did Mr. Ellison tell you he was divorced? Beatrice asked. Yes. Did you believe him? He showed me a divorce decree. The decree was fabricated. Celeste explained how Daniel had persuaded her to sell her apartment and invest the proceeds in an exclusive opportunity. The money disappeared into the same network of accounts that had swallowed our savings. Finally, Beatrice played an audio recording. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom. Once the house closes, the rest becomes easy. Celeste's recorded voice answered, "What about Mara?" Daniel laughed. "She signs anything I place in front of her. She won't understand until I'm gone." The recording ended. For the first time, Daniel's expression showed fear. His attorney requested a delay. The judge refused. Under questioning, Daniel could not explain why the sale proceeds had moved through 3 companies before reaching an account under his control. He couldn't explain the forged signatures or the false divorce decree. Near the conclusion, the judge asked whether I wanted to speak. I stood and looked at the man I had loved for 12 years. For months, I had imagined screaming at him. Yet looking at him then, I felt something quieter than anger. "The day Sophie was born," I said, "you believed you had taken everything from me." Daniel stared at the table. "You were wrong. My daughter was the only part of our life that was real. Everything else, a house, money, and a marriage built upon lies, was replaceable." The judge found substantial evidence of fraud, forgery, and deliberate financial misconduct. He froze Daniel's remaining assets, authorized full discovery, and referred the evidence to criminal investigators. When court ended, 2 detectives approached Daniel. I didn't remain to watch. Outside, Arthur caught up with us. "Should we celebrate?" he asked. "With champagne?" He looked horrified and pointed toward Sophie. I was thinking pancakes. Winning did not repair my life overnight. Some money was gone forever. Daniel had used enormous amounts to conceal losses. However, insurance restored part of my retirement savings, and the court awarded me the remaining marital assets. I rented a small townhouse near Huntsville. On our first night, Sophie and I had a crib, 2 folding chairs, and no pictures on the walls. Mom looked around the nearly empty room. "This already feels more peaceful than your old house." She was right. Daniel's financial license was suspended. Former clients filed lawsuits, and prosecutors charged him with fraud, forgery, and theft. He eventually accepted a plea agreement that included prison time and restitution. When Beatrice told me I was feeding Sophie mashed carrots, that ordinary moment mattered more than his punishment. Celeste sent me a handwritten letter. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She admitted ignoring warning signs because she wanted Daniel's promises to be true. Her final sentence read, "I hope Sophie grows up believing honest people still outnumber dishonest ones." I kept the letter, not because Celeste deserved forgiveness, but because I refused to allow Daniel to turn bitterness into another thing he had stolen. Arthur became family. Every Sunday, he arrived in an old pickup truck that embarrassed his security team. He sat on the floor, made ridiculous animal noises, and let Sophie pull at his silver hair. On her first birthday, he brought me a blue folder. "If this contains money, I'm returning it. It doesn't belong to you." Inside were documents establishing an education trust for Sophie. "I can't accept this. Eleanor and I always wanted to support children who reminded us to believe in people. Sophie qualifies." I hugged him before pride could stop me. That summer, I returned part-time to my work as a maternity nurse. The first day I wore my scrubs again. My colleagues gathered around Sophie's stroller with balloons and homemade food. My closest friends studied me. "You don't look like someone who lost everything." I smiled. I didn't. A year after Daniel sold our home, Mom and I drove through Franklin after visiting friends. We passed the White House without planning to. New flowers bordered the walkway. Bicycles rested beside the garage. Through the front window, I saw children running across the living room. Sophie pointed. "House," she said. "Yes, sweetheart. It's a house." I didn't slow down. She had no memory of that place, and I no longer needed one. People sometimes say buying Arthur's bus ticket changed my life because he was wealthy. They misunderstand. It changed my life because, on the worst morning I had ever lived, I still chose to be the person my father raised. Daniel believed survival belonged to whoever lied best, manipulated first, and took the most. But he lost his freedom, his reputation, and the privilege of watching his daughter grow. I rebuilt my life through people who expected nothing in return. My mother, Beatrice, Nathan, Arthur, and friends who appeared with diapers, meals, and open arms. Today, Sophie is old enough to ask why we don't live with her father. One day I will tell her the truth, not to make her hate him, but to teach her that love without honesty is only another form of control. My father once told me, a house can protect you from a storm, but only good people can make you feel safe inside it. I had to lose my house to understand him. If betrayal ever forces you to begin again, remember this. Rebuilding rarely starts with a courtroom victory or a perfect plan. Sometimes it begins with $24, a bus ticket, and one decision not to let another person's cruelty change who you are.